Wilson Alexander of The Advocate. Got a piece up at theadvocate.com right now. It's titled, LSU may have a way to help players earn more money than the Tigers will be able to pay them. Wilson joins us on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Wilson, how we doing? Do we have Wilson? Wilson, you there?
Can you hear me?
I got you now. I believe we weren't hitting a button there, but we got you. So, look, I want to discuss this story because I think we're all entering a new frontier here that is different than the Wild West that we've seen. As right now, basically, you go to the booster base, whether it's grassroots or the big money donors, and you put all the money into a collective, and you try to dish out as much of it as you can to buy a roster. I think everyone is on that page. At what point will that no longer be the case?
Well, potentially this summer, as the House settlement has a part in it where there's an enforcement arm. That is, every NIL deal over $600 has to go through this clearinghouse, which is going to be run by Deloitte. And in theory, that is supposed to curb the pay-for-play activity that you just referenced, where collectives have just sort of turned into this thing that is designed to help you fund your rosters. And it's sort of true NIL is obviously out there, but it hasn't become the main sort of engine for building your rosters. So that would, in theory, curb pay-for-play activity. Now, we'll see if that actually happens, because there's a lot of questions about that as to what are the future of collectives. Can that sort of thing actually be enforced? I'm sure it'll face legal challenges because one of the things that the NCAA has said is that they want those NIL deals to be fair market value and serve a valid business purpose. Well, how you define that may change person to person. So, in theory, it could end it this summer, or at least certainly lessen in importance. But we'll kind of have to see how that plays out because it's a little bit uncertain right now.
The other piece to this is the revenue sharing portion, and you write in your story that LSU is expected to max that out at just north of $20 million. But there's a way to actually get the players a little bit more money. I think that's the genesis of why you wrote this story. So walk me through those two pieces to this puzzle.
Yes, in the first year, that's going to be the $20.5 million, and LSU, as you said, certainly plans to pay up to that. But the new recruiting frontier, the new battleground, is really going to be how do you exceed the cap? And LSU's plan is it's partnered with Playfly, which is its longtime multimedia rights partner anyway, in this program called Playfly Max. And they did that last summer. But the sort of details of how that are going to work and the significance of it sort of became apparent at LSU's board meeting on Friday when an amended contract between the two parties was approved. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be members of Playfly staff who are on LSU's campus and helping out, trying to find real, true NIL deals, things like you would see Garrett Nussmeier with Powerade or Livy Dunn with Buori, trying to leverage what LSU's brand is and the corporate sponsorships that they already have to get these players more money than they can be paid by the school.
So it essentially is a third party that is matchmaking athletes and brand. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, in a way. I think the third party element is interesting there because LSU is certainly part of this. I mean, this went through the Board of Supervisors. This is something that LSU will be part of. So it's not necessarily full-on third party, but Playfly is sort of a third party in this, and they'll be able to help leverage those things and try to arrange those deals.
So Bayou Traditions is obviously LSU's collective at this point that is basically the honey hole, and you just distribute things out of there. What do you make of the future of that organization and I guess collectives around the country?
It's just really unclear right now in the long-term future. And I think there's an important distinction there between sort of short-term importance and long-term future. Because in the short term, Bayou Traditions is still really important to LSU. Kelly Zinn, LSU's deputy AD, emphasized that they want to be aggressive in the basketball transfer portal here coming up to support Matt McMahon. And a lot of that's going to be contingent on the dollars coming from the collective. So over the next few months here, it's still really important. Maybe even if LSU, depending on how active it needs to get in the spring transfer portal window for football, it would still serve a purpose there. But past July 1, when the House settlement is expected to go into effect, obviously that still has to be approved by the judge in April. The collective's future is really unclear, because LSU's kind of has to figure that out to see, sort of what the national landscape is, what is allowed. If it is allowed to continue to operate and would in some capacity, then it could have a role. But what that's going to be is just sort of unknown right now.
Wilson Alexander is our guest, covers LSU for The Advocate. Got a great piece up at theadvocate.com right now talking about the new frontier in terms of revenue streams and athlete compensation in NCAA athletics. One of the pieces that you talked about in here is revenue streams that LSU is going to have to try to tap into to help pay the athletes the $20 million that you have reported. And one of the things you write about are jersey patches and on-field advertisements. What did you uncover there?
Yeah, part of the Playfly deal that LSU struck is that Playfly is kind of given the exclusive right to go out and try to sell those things, basically, and help LSU find a partner for on-field advertisements and for jersey patches. For the on-field advertisements, we've already seen in basketball this year, there's a Cox logo on the floor of basketball games. It would be like that, but at Alex Box Stadium and at Tiger Stadium. That started being allowed this past year. LSU didn't jump in on that immediately, but their deputy AD for revenue generation, Clay Harris, told me that you're going to see that in the not too distant future here. Logos on the field there, probably on the 25-yard line at Tiger Stadium, and something at Alex Box Stadium as well. And with jersey patches, those aren't allowed by the NCAA yet, but there's conversations happening on the national level to basically sell space on a jersey for a company to advertise. And that's something that LSU is certainly looking into. Clay Harris said that they've been doing research into that over the past 6 months behind the scenes. And as soon as that would be allowed by the NCAA, if those rules change, then LSU is ready to capitalize on it. He called it one of the most valuable assets that LSU would ever have to sell. And so that they would certainly be interested in finding someone to do that with.
I'm curious, and this is not something that you wrote in the story, but I feel like you've had a lot of conversations. Perhaps this has come up. There was a time there for like 20 plus years where it was such a facilities arms race, and LSU certainly competed in that. They've spent a lot of money upgrading facilities. Well, now with the amount of money that's going to have to go right back to the athletes, do you think that part of things is going to slow down?
Certainly. There was last year when LSU opened its performance facility, the athletic training area in the football operations building, that did that new development. One of the things someone told me was they were really glad that got done when it did, because that is not going to be something that necessarily is a priority moving forward. It is certainly still something that LSU can continue to build out with its facilities. They're still in the midst of working on this new arena. That would be a huge facilities type project. But obviously, even the funding for that is different than what you might have seen in the past, because that's going to be something that is done, with it's not just like money that you're getting from donors to build a facility or something like that, or just leaning fully on tap. The funding for that is different. So it's that's really what we're pivoting away from. It's Scott Woodward has said before, it's going away from capital in that direction toward human capital and investing in the players in order to be able to have them on your rosters, because that's what they're more focused on these days is the money that they're actually going to have in their pocket. They still want the good facilities. LSU can't just let those, fall apart and rot, and it's certainly not going to let them to, but it's not the priority that it used to be.
And last one here, Wilson, we appreciate some of your time here on this Monday. In your conversations and in your understanding of what this new world is going to look like, how do you feel like LSU is going to stack up in terms of their ability to acquire talent with the folks who are in wealthier states, wealthier donor bases, bigger alumni bases, that kind of thing? I think that's what LSU fans are curious about and maybe fearful of.
Yeah, we've already seen that be an issue at times over the past few years. The collective was sort of slow to get really up and running to the level that some other places are and have been. I think we've seen a change over the past year in particular, maybe a year and a half plus. But that's something that sort of approach and mindset needs to continue even if collectives aren't happening. And this is something where LSU is going out to try to find those true NIL deals like we talked about. Then that mindset still needs to exist. It would still need those corporate partners to be willing to get in on those things with LSU athletes. And in that regard, I do think LSU is well positioned. It's a nationally recognized brand. That's something that it has been trying to leverage for the past 2 years, but it's sort of the whole landscape kind of shifted away from that toward these anonymous donor dollars and basically just giving over the table payments in a way that we used to see under the table payments. And so I think LSU is well positioned if it can become more of a true NIL model. But we'll kind of see how things play out because we just really don't know what the future of collectives are. But either way, I think the thing moving forward is how do you exceed the cap and how much can you exceed the cap, because everybody is going to be trying to do that.
Story at The Advocate. LSU may have a way to help players earn more money than the Tigers will be able to pay them. You can go check it out online or in your hard copy as well. Wilson, we appreciate some time, man. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
You too. That is Wilson Alexander from The Advocate. Briefly on this while we're still here before we go to break. Like, I've watched every game LSU's played in basketball. I don't know that I could have told you this morning that there was a Cox logo on the floor. Like, I honestly...
You never noticed that?
I'm sure I have. It's right there, but it didn't stick with me, I guess is the point.
I always remember that. Like, it's been there for a long time.
So I don't... That one it hasn't bothered me. I don't know that LSU's basketball floor is as, like, powerful in my brain as the football field and the baseball fields are.
Yeah.
That's just a personal thing, maybe, or maybe that's just a common deal. Yeah, I mean, if there was a huge corporate logo in the middle of center field, like, that would bum me out a little bit. If there's, like, super huge, colorful stuff on the 25-yard lines, like, that'll bum me out a little bit. But what would bum me out more is if LSU couldn't recruit any players because they didn't have the revenue stream to revenue share with the student athletes. And if you're going to pay $20 million a year to the players across all the sports, you have to generate revenue from just about anywhere you can. I believe, y'all know this, I believe LSU's football uniforms to be as iconic as any in American sport. I don't think that's hyperbole. No one else looks like that, and I think it's gorgeous. I think it's awesome. Now, LSU watered it down a little bit this year because they never wore them, but that's the case. And if you slapped a big red logo on or something, it would bum me out. Now, that said, the Cubs did this on the sleeve, and the Yankees have done it on the sleeve, and it hasn't been that big a deal. If you gave me the option, like, do it or don't do it, and money's not on the table, I don't want to do it. But I understand. Like, I understand that we're entering a new world. Beck, do you have any stronger thoughts than me on that?
No, I just think that the uniform is you are one that values the history and standard of uniforms. I think more than most people. I think there's going to be. I think a lot of people in my generation are not going to care that much if they do have a patch on the uniform. I don't really care that much about it. I mean, the NBA's been doing it for years. They have the little patch on the front, the front corner of the shoulder.
The Cubs have a Motorola M on their left shoulder, and it hasn't made me turn the game off.
Right.
So it's. I don't want to. I'm being careful not to actually use an actual brand because I don't mean to disparage anybody in a hypothetical. But like, I would like to have an example of like who wants to buy the jersey patch and what does that look like. If it's like orange and red, like that's gonna be like, come on, man. If it's subtle and like black and white or something, like the Cubs Motorola is this basically the same color as the jersey. It kind of goes. The Yankees have an insurance company, and it's navy and white. But if it's something obnoxious, like I'll probably say something. But it's just a new world, and I understand where LSU's coming from. And as I've always said, as changes come and go, like the most important thing is winning, and you basically have to do what it takes within reason to go win. And if you can get I mean, I don't know what the dollar figures we're talking about here are, but I'm sure it's tens. You're talking about, I'm sure, 8 figures worth of money to get patches on the jersey and logos on the field. It is what it is. Like, I love the fact that Alec Box Stadium, they just took all the outfield wall stuff and they don't have colorful logos anymore. They just have everything in green and white. I think that looks a lot better, and that kind of goes back to the point of kind of blending it in and making it look seamless while taking a few bucks on the side. So, again, I think that this is probably a talking point to your point back for like 50% of people, and the other 50 are like, who gives a damn? When do they play? I do care about some of that stuff. I like tradition. I like history. I like ambiance. I like that kind of stuff. And we'll see just how it all shakes out. But as I mentioned at the top, I'm admitting I'm not blowing a gasket. Like, I couldn't have told you this morning what company's logo was on the court at the PMAC. I would have had a hard time coming up with that off the top of my head. So that just goes to show you, I guess, maybe some things are a little less important than I think they are in my head. We'll see. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.